A vast, desolate landscape stretched to the horizon, under a leaden gray sky, like an ancient funeral shroud. Cracks in the parched, reddish-brown earth, twisted like ancient, festering wounds, deep and unforgiving. It recounted a tale from ancient times, when the celestial veil, a shimmering barrier of cosmic energy, tore open violently. And those called Watchers, with their fallen glory, yet still possessing an unearthly majesty, descended to Earth, forever altering the world. They, bearing forbidden knowledge and divine arrogance, sowed the seeds for a terrifying race, the Nephilim, true titans of shadow and primal instinct. A small family, their figures appearing minuscule and vulnerable, moved slowly across the cracked, dusty ground, their steps heavy with fatigue. Aron, the father, a man with a weathered face, etched with hardship but showing resolute, unwavering determination, led the way. Seraphina, the mother, walked in the middle, her expression a mix of weary resignation and fierce, unyielding resolve. Lyra, the eldest daughter, followed close behind, her vigilant eyes sweeping from side to side, missing nothing in their harsh surroundings. Her hand tightly held the small, trembling hand of Ethan, her younger brother, whose innocent eyes were wide with a fear he barely understood. Ethan carried an old, tattered backpack, seemingly heavier than his small frame could bear, filled with their meager, precious supplies. In this era of overwhelming fear and utter destruction, the remaining mortals were but specks of dust clinging to fragile life, struggling against an unseen, omnipresent horror. Aron's family, a final, flickering cell of hope in a dying world, journeyed on the arduous path of destiny. They paused beside a gigantic, fallen tree, its roots torn violently from the earth. Ethan collapsed onto the cracked earth, his tired eyes gazing longingly at a small, dry piece of bread clutched in his hand. Lyra knelt beside him, gently comforting her brother, her presence a silent, unspoken promise of protection. Every drop of water, meticulously rationed, every dry crumb of food, painstakingly found, was a small, hard-won victory against the abyss of despair that threatened to swallow them whole. But the gnawing, physical hunger, though constant, paled in comparison to the dread that gnawed ceaselessly at their very souls. A cold, suffocating fear. The ground suddenly shook slightly, a subtle vibration that sent a jolt of alarm through them. They startled, standing upright in unison, their eyes wide and on high alert, scanning the silent, empty landscape. Then, a deep, resonant rumble echoed from beneath the earth, a dull, heavy sound. It was terrifyingly familiar, chilling their hearts to the bone, for it signaled the approach of unimaginable horror. It was very close now. A nearby ancient tree, its colossal trunk scarred by ages, toppled with a deafening, earth-shattering roar, sending up a cloud of dust and debris. From behind the trees, a colossal shadow, indistinct and terrifying, dimly appeared against the somber sky. Only a glimpse of its enormous, dark, and terrifying body was seen, its form massive and indistinct, a silhouette of ultimate dread. It bore the grotesque, immense form of an ancient titan, more fearsome than any creature known to Earth, a living nightmare. The Nephilim, the giant demon, heir to divine arrogance, a monstrous progeny of fallen grace and earthly sin. They were the undisputed rulers of this desolate age. Great, merciless predators who had turned the once fertile land of mortals into their own cruel, sprawling hunting ground. Aron's family plunged deeper into the twisted, gnarled forest, their desperate run for life, their only instinct. The giant footsteps grew closer, each step a tremor shaking the very space around them. A rhythmic, terrifying drumbeat of impending doom. Run. Only run. No thought. No looking back. Only the primal, overwhelming instinct to survive. Run. 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 Before that colossal, malevolent shadow swallowed their last, fragile breath. Night descended swiftly, swallowing all light, painting the devastated world in shades of impenetrable darkness. Only the faint, struggling moonlight occasionally pierced through the dense, tangled canopy of skeletal trees, offering fleeting glimpses of their grim surroundings. The four of them were huddled, crammed into a small, cramped rock cave, its rough, cold walls offering meager, illusory protection. Lyra held Ethan tightly, his small body trembling uncontrollably, his innocent eyes wide with unadulterated terror. Within the suffocating embrace of the earth, amidst the thick, all-consuming darkness, fear became tangible. A cold, clammy presence that choked their breath. The night was a blindfold, rendering them helpless, but also a prison for the soul, where the unseen hunter lurked. Unseen but felt. The giant footsteps echoed from afar, a distant, ominous thud that gradually grew closer, shaking the very ground beneath them. The ground shook more violently, the vibrations growing stronger, signaling its relentless, methodical approach. It was searching, not with mortal eyes, but with an impossibly keen scent, with the subtle vibrations of the earth, and with the very essence of fear emanating from its tiny prey. A deep, guttural growl, like thunder rumbling from the deepest recesses of the earth, tore through the stillness of the night. That roar carried an ancient wrath, an insatiable hunger that promised utter annihilation. The footsteps stopped abruptly, right outside the cave entrance, casting an immense, terrifying shadow over their hiding place. There was a horrific scraping sound on the rock face, like the colossal claws of hell itself, testing the cave's fragile exterior. The icy breath of death, cold and fetid, wafted into the cave entrance, carrying the stench of decay and the promise of doom. It knew they were there. It was toying with its prey, savoring their ultimate terror, prolonging their agony before the final strike. A colossal shadow fell, completely covering the cave entrance, plunging them into absolute darkness. A giant hand, gray and scarred with ancient wounds, thick as a tree trunk, slowly, deliberately reached into the cave, its long, sharp talons, like colossal blades, groped and searched blindly in the confined space, seeking out their fragile forms. The hand of the destroyer, cold as ice, more horrifying than any nightmare conjured by the darkest mind, brushed tantalizingly close. Just one light touch, one casual brush of a finger, would be enough to end all life, to crush them into oblivion. Aron, with a desperate surge of strength, pulled his family deeper into the cave's hidden recess, pushing them beyond the reach of the monstrous hand. Lyra, her eyes darting frantically in the darkness, discovered a small, barely visible crack at the very back of the cave. A desperate, almost impossible escape route. They began to crawl through the narrow, twisting crack, filled with dust and sharp rocks, their bodies scraping painfully against the rough surfaces. The Nephilim outside roared in frustrated rage when its probing hand found nothing, its thunderous cry shaking the very earth. It began to smash the rock face, making the entire cave tremble violently, sending rock fragments and dust raining down upon them. A fragile escape route, indeed, but one that led not to safety, but to a new abyss, another perilous unknown. They had narrowly escaped death, only to rush headlong into the cold, terrifying embrace of another fate. They moved through the dry riverbed, a desolate expanse filled with jagged pebbles and cracked, parched earth. The Nephilim's footsteps still echoed ominously from above, a relentless, rhythmic thud. It was pacing along the cliff edge, relentless in its pursuit, a hunter unwilling to give up its chosen prey. The Nephilim, like a persistent nightmare, an inescapable curse, clung to them like a shadow, a monstrous specter that refused to be shaken. They found a large rock hollow, just big enough for 4 tiny figures to squeeze inside, offering a brief, illusory respite. They squeezed inside, their bodies pressed together in the cramped space. Suddenly, the Nephilim's thunderous roar was right above them, shaking the ground violently, vibrating through their very bones. A large rock from the cliff above, dislodged by its mighty footsteps, fell with a terrifying crash, narrowly missing them, sending splinters of stone flying. Hiding was useless. It had seen them. The giant's red, glowing eyes, filled with predatory hunger, were locked onto its tiny prey, unwavering and cold. The Nephilim appeared on the cliff edge, its colossal form silhouetted against the dim, bruised sky. Its shadow stretched long and dark into the riverbed below, enveloping them completely, like a shroud of doom. It bent down, its immense head looming over them, its red eyes, blazing with hunger and unbridled rage, stared directly at them. It stretched out its colossal hand, trying to reach them, its fingers already splayed to grasp. There was nowhere left to hide, no time for fear. In the face of certain death, there was only one choice: fight or sacrifice. They frantically ran from the rock hollow, scattering like startled mice. Lyra looked at her parents and brother, her heart aching with a sudden, terrible resolve. Then, she looked the other way, towards the denser part of the forest. With a decisive, heartbreaking surge of courage, she rushed in that direction, hoping to distract the Nephilim. The Nephilim paused for a moment, its immense head tilting slightly. Then its roar echoed, a chilling sound of triumph, as it chose Lyra, rushing after her with incredible speed. There are moments when a tiny soul, seemingly insignificant, carries the weight and will of an entire people, of a desperate hope for survival. The young girl faced death alone, running towards certain doom, to buy a slender, fleeting chance for those she loved more than life itself. That was sacrifice, the purest essence of love and courage, blossoming in the heart of despair. Lyra gasped, her lungs burning, utterly exhausted, plunging deeper into a denser part of the forest, where large ancient trees had hollow trunks, like gaping mouths. She crawled into a hollow tree, trying to hide, her body aching, her breath ragged. Every breath was a silent plea for time, for a miracle. Every heartbeat was a vow, a testament to her unyielding will. Her body was weary, pushed beyond its limits, but the flame of her will, of her fierce determination, remained unwavering. The Nephilim's destructive sounds came from outside, the thunderous crashes of falling trees, the cracking of earth and stone as it tore through the forest. Lyra saw the giant foot of the Nephilim moving back and forth, its colossal size blocking out the faint light. She saw its form more clearly now, a creature as tall as a building, with bulging, powerful muscles, skin like rough, ancient stone, and glowing red eyes that pulsed menacingly in the darkness. It bent down, sniffing the air, its massive head sweeping back and forth, then let out a frustrated roar. The giant roared, its cry tearing through the air, shaking the very ground. But this time, it could not find its tiny prey. The hunter, for a brief, precious moment, had been fooled. Lyra saw a shimmering piece of metal on the ground, glinting faintly near the base of her tree. An idea, reckless yet brilliant, sparked in her desperate mind. As she looked up at a large, loose rock precariously perched on a small cliff above. She crawled out of the tree, carefully, gently picking up the shimmering piece of metal. Then, she made a small sound, a deliberate rustle, just enough to catch its attention. The Nephilim startled and instantly turned back, its glowing red eyes locking onto Lyra. In the most desperate moment, mortal wisdom shone like lightning, a flash of ingenuity against overwhelming odds. A reckless idea, a fragile chance, but it was their last, desperate hope. Lyra ran towards the cliff, her small legs shimmering piece of metal towards the Nephilim, aiming for its terrifying red eye. The metal flew, a tiny projectile against a giant. The Nephilim roared in pain, bringing its massive hand up to shield its eye, recoiling slightly in surprise and momentary agony. Lyra wasted no time. She quickly climbed the small cliff, scrambling frantically, reaching the loose rock. The Nephilim had recovered, its roar now one of pure fury, as it rushed towards her again, closing in for the kill. With the power of desperation, Lyra kicked forcefully at the loose rock, pouring every ounce of her strength into the blow. The enormous rock trembled, then slowly, agonizingly, slid down, gathering speed as it fell. The force of destiny, in that singular moment, had tipped towards humanity. The ancient rock, like a judgment of nature, a weight of ages, had fallen. The rock fell with a deafening crash, crushing the Nephilim's leg with horrifying force. A horrifying, dry, cracking sound echoed through the forest, the sound of bone and stone shattering. The Nephilim let out an earth-shattering roar of agony, a sound of unimaginable pain that shook the entire forest, felling trees and sending animals fleeing in terror. It struggled violently, trying to pull its leg free from beneath the immense weight. But the rock was too heavy, too immense. Lyra gasped, utterly exhausted, collapsing onto the ground, her body trembling uncontrollably. She had done it. She had wounded it. The Nephilim's roar of pain echoed throughout the forest as it continued to struggle, its thrashing slowly weakening. The giant's thunderous roar finally faded, replaced by gasps and groans of immense pain. The hunter was immobilized, trapped. The power of human will, frail yet indomitable, had subdued a part of the darkness, had carved out a moment of respite. But was this an eternal victory, a turning point in the war, or merely a temporary reprieve for another tragedy waiting to unfold? The faint light of dawn illuminated a vast, desolate plain, bearing the golden-orange hues of fragile hope. Lyra limped, covered in dust and scratches, her clothes torn, emerging from the edge of the forest, her small figure silhouetted against the rising sun. She looked back, where the Nephilim's roars had completely silenced, a deep, eerie stillness now settling over the devastated landscape. She turned her face forward, her gaze fixed on the distance. In the distance, she saw the figures of Aron, Seraphina, and Ethan waiting, their eyes filled with worry, then relief, then overwhelming joy. As the first light of dawn broke on the horizon, painting the sky with colors of rebirth, it brought a fragile ray of hope, a promise of a new beginning. The family was reunited, their bond strengthened by shared ordeal and survival. A battle had been won, a monstrous threat temporarily neutralized. But the greater war, the relentless struggle for the very survival of humanity, wasn't yet over. Ethan ran to hug her tightly, his small arms wrapping around her. tears streaming down his face. Aron and Seraphina also embraced Lyra, their eyes expressing all their immense relief and profound gratitude, a silent testament to her bravery. We survived. That whisper, a fragile yet powerful affirmation, echoed in everyone's mind, a quiet victory, but a world remained, vast and dangerous, full of unknown dangers and unresolved curses, shadows of the past still lingering. The journey never truly ends, only shifts its course. Lyra looked towards the horizon, where the sun was beginning to rise fully, illuminating a devastated world, yet still holding hope, a promise of renewal. They walked on together, towards the dawn, towards an unwritten future, uncertain yet filled with purpose. Their footsteps were small but resolute, leaving faint prints on the scarred earth. And in the eternal shadow of the Nephilim, amidst the remnants of a fallen world, the echoes of life continued to rise as a grand, unwavering affirmation of humanity's indomitable will to endure. When the first dawn radiated across the primordial hills of the world, humans lived in innocence, close to the breath of the earth. But even in that peace, there were whispers only a few could hear. Enoch. Then night fell, and visions flooded in. A blinding light, gigantic, blurry figures, ear-splitting screams, blood and tears mingled, and a glowing red eye flashed in the darkness. Enoch awoke with a gasp. A profound unease enveloped him. In broad daylight, the sky was suddenly torn apart. A dazzling, overwhelming light tore through the air, followed by thunder and roars that shook the ground. From it, the Watchers descended to Earth. Azazel led them. They were majestically beautiful yet chilling. Humans prostrated themselves. Only Enoch he observed from afar. O dust dwellers, we grant you knowledge. Knowledge will elevate you. Initially, they brought convenience, teaching to build strong cities, to cultivate. Humans rejoiced. But then Azazel taught metalworking, taught jewelry and cosmetics, taught divination and magic. The whole world gradually fell into chaos. Knowledge became a double-edged sword. The corruption spread. The Watchers married the daughters of men. Children were born, but they were not human. The Nephilim, they grew gigantic, monstrous. Possessing only savage instinct, they ravaged villages. Humans turned to slaughtering each other. Blood flowed everywhere. Cities plunged into smoke and ruin, hands stained with blood, faces filled with terror. Corpses lay strewn. Enoch knelt, his eyes wide with horror. Tears streamed down his gaunt cheeks. The world collapsed. Dawn had turned to dusk. Knowledge became a curse. The earth, once peaceful, now drowned in sin and blood. Enoch stood on a desolate hill. The sky was pitch black. Heavy clouds portended a great storm. Wind howled fiercely. He looked up at the sky. Mat ong jong jai nuak mat. Yet a faint echo from a high realm. The world needed a voice. It needed a witness. Their cries had been heard. A mission beyond human understanding was about to be entrusted. The earth plunged into chaos, ruined cities, trampled fields. The roar of the Nephilim and the cries of humanity echoed everywhere. The stench of blood and decay permeated the air. Enoch wandered amidst the ruins, witnessing the horrifying scene with pain and despair. He had tried to warn, but no one listened. One pitch-dark night, as Enoch almost succumbed to despair, a light, brighter than 1,000 suns, suddenly tore through the darkness. That light was not blinding, but warm and filled with authority. From it, a tall, majestic figure appeared. It was the Archangel Gabriel. His colossal wings were as white as snow, emanating pure light. His face was serene, his eyes clear blue, yet carried a sternness. Gabriel said nothing, only lightly touched Enoch's forehead. Immediately, a torrent of knowledge poured into Enoch's mind. He saw things he had never seen, understood things he had never understood. He realized that Earth's cry had reached the Most High. Enoch, you have witnessed the world's degradation, the fall of those who were once our brethren. Now, you shall witness the justice of judgment. You shall be the witness, recording all things. Enoch felt his body lighten. He was lifted from the ground, soaring past the clouds, through the atmosphere, ascending to a realm no mortal could touch. Enoch's journey began. He was led through the most horrifying realms. First was the cursed world. Enoch witnessed sinful souls wandering in gloomy valleys, tormented by suffering. He saw the punishments meant for the wicked. Then, Gabriel took him to a mysterious place, deep beneath the earth, the prison of the Watchers. This was a colossal, icy cave, formed of sharp black stone. Thousands of fallen angels, with torn wings and distorted bodies, were chained by fiery bonds, unable to move. A faint light was barely enough to see their desperate, regretful, or hateful eyes staring at Enoch. Azazel, though chained, still exuded a dark energy and eyes filled with hatred when he saw Enoch. He hissed inaudible curses. Enoch felt disgust and deep sorrow. After the darkness, Enoch was taken to a realm of complete contrast. Heaven. He flew through seas of pure light, brilliant fields woven with spirits, and perfect peace. Millions of loyal angels, with splendid wings and sacred voices, were worshiping. Enoch was led near the throne of the Most High. The throne had no specific form, but was made of infinite light, majestic and sacred beyond sight. Gabriel stood beside him, explaining the universe's structure, the heavens' layers, the flow of time and destiny. Enoch felt absolute peace, understanding overflowing his soul. He realized that all the destruction he had witnessed was part of a grander plan, a purification to lead to a new beginning. here. Enoch was given prophecies about the distant future concerning the final judgment, the destruction of the wicked, and a new world where justice and peace would reign. He saw the seeds of hope, future generations that would be saved. He understood that his mission was not just to witness, but also to record, so these words could be passed down to those worthy. When the journey ended, Gabriel brought Enoch back to earth. He felt a strange heaviness. Now he carried the burden of the entire truth, the universe's beauty and horror, the fall and punishment, as well as the prophecies of the future. He knew the great flood was coming. Enoch stood on a desolate hill, looking down at the decaying world. His eyes were no longer simply fearful or despairing, but resolute. He was the only one who witnessed the full truth, the only one who carried the warnings and hope. He knew no one would believe him, no one would listen, but he had to act. He unrolled the animal skin he always carried, and under the faint moonlight, Enoch began to write. Each stroke was poignant, authentic, like a vow to himself and to the Most High. He was not a warrior, but he was a witness. His testimony would be a flickering light in the darkness. The earth continued to sink deep into sin. The Nephilim dominated, spreading terror. Humans lived in fear, slaughtering each other for survival. Enoch incessantly traveled everywhere, trying to warn everyone about the coming punishment. He carried the animal skin scroll, reading aloud the prophecies, pointing out signs of degradation, and warning of a great flood that would sweep away everything. However, his words were deemed madness. People laughed at him, threw stones. Some even threatened and drove him away. Enoch felt loneliness and despair, witnessing humanity's blindness and stubbornness. In the final days, a small family, Noah with his wife, sons, and daughters-in-law, believed Enoch's words. They were the only ones who maintained purity and faith in the Most High. Enoch met Noah. He passed on all the prophecies and instructed Noah on how to build a large ark to survive the great flood. Enoch felt a faint ray of hope upon seeing this family. The sky began to change. Giant black clouds gathered from afar, swallowing the sunlight. The atmosphere became stifling, eerily silent. Then, thunder exploded across the sky. Rain began to pour. Not ordinary raindrops, but torrential waterfalls, like walls of water cascading from above. At the same time, the ground shook violently. Underground springs burst forth, gushing like the earth's veins. Water levels rose rapidly, engulfing everything. The horrified screams of humans, the furious roars of the Nephilim, mingled with the surging floodwaters. They ran chaotically, trying to climb higher hills, but the water kept rising relentlessly. Massive architectural structures, humanity's pride, crumbled in an instant, swept away by the current. Enoch stood on a high mountain peak, witnessing the scene. He no longer felt fear for himself, only deep sorrow for the inevitable destruction. He saw Noah's Ark floating on the raging floodwaters, small but sturdy. He knew it was the only hope remaining. The water rose to the highest mountain peaks. The entire earth was submerged under a vast, boundless ocean. After many days of rain, gradually, the surging water sounds diminished. The thunder also ceased. The black clouds began to dissipate, revealing the first faint rays of sunlight. The water slowly receded, exposing jagged, bare mountain peaks. Noah and his family emerged from the ark. They saw a completely new world, cleansed. No more Nephilim, no more human ruin. Only absolute tranquility remained. They knelt, giving thanks to the Most High. Then, a glorious and radiant halo appeared in the sky. Within that halo, a majestic figure, indescribable in words, appeared. That was the Most High. A voice echoed throughout space, filled with authority yet warm and gentle. O righteous ones, I have seen your faith. This is my covenant. I will never again destroy the earth with a flood. The sign of this covenant shall be the rainbow in the sky. A dazzling rainbow appeared, arching across the sky, colorful and magnificent. It was a symbol of hope, of peace, and of an eternal promise. When the rainbow appeared, Enoch felt a change in his body. A pure light enveloped him. He looked at Noah, looked at the new world gradually regenerating. His mission was complete. He had witnessed, he had recorded, and he had passed on. His body began to dissolve into light, gradually fading. He did not vanish in pain or fear, but in absolute peace, as if returning to a place he belonged. Enoch disappeared completely, leaving only the celestial symbols shimmering on the rock where he once sat, and the animal skin scroll with his writings lying there. The scroll shimmered gently, then returned to normal. Noah and his family looked up, saw the rainbow, and sensed something sacred had just occurred. They understood that it was a promise, a new beginning. The new world had begun. Enoch's story ends, but his testimony will live on forever.